好，歡迎大家嚟到。
Good afternoon. Welcome to the police press conference today. First of all, let me introduce the panelists to you. First of all, in the middle, to your right-hand side, Mr. Che Chen-chung, Chief Superintendent of the Police Public Relations Branch. And then also in the middle, Mr. Bradley Wright, District Commander of Mong Kok District. To his right-hand side, we have Mr. Lee Kwai-Wang, Senior Superintendent of Organized Crime and Tribe Bureau. To your rightmost, Mr. Kong Ming-cheng, Senior Superintendent, Media Liaison and Communication of the Police Public Relations Branch. There will be some opening remarks, followed by Q&A. Please raise your hand. You can at most ask 3 questions each. And after you finish with your questions, please pass the mic back to us. Without further ado, I'll give the floor to Mr. Chair. And over the past weekend, the mob blocked the roads. They damaged a lot of MTR stations. They threw a large number of petrol bombs so as to charge at the cordon line of the police, and they set fire everywhere. I think everybody would like to see calm being restored. Unfortunately, yesterday, when the school year started, there were some protesters initiated the so-called non-cooperation campaign. Chaos was created, affecting people going to work, people going to school, and they were all troubled. Now, let's take a look. They use umbrellas, backpacks, or they use the body to prevent the train doors from being closed. And some of the protesters pressed the emergency button either on the train or on the platform so the train doors could not close. For such behavior on the part of the protesters, they prevented the operation of the trains. They affected citizens and students going to work and going to school respectively. They're affecting the train safety, and they are defying the court injunction order. Fortunately, as a result of the liaison mechanism between the MTR as well as the police, yesterday at a number of MTR stations, we arrested a number of suspected law-breaking protesters. So we were able to prevent such unlawful and irresponsible acts from causing serious traffic impacts. I would urge you to think about this. What is the true meaning of the so-called non-cooperation campaign on the part of the so-called protesters? As a law enforcement agency, I believe that they are just using this as an excuse, saying that they would like to express their aspirations. In fact, they are breaking the law. They are causing nuisance to the people. Last night, in Prince Edward, as well as outside Mong Kok Police Station, there were still scenes of violence. A large number of protesters sieged the police station. They pointed laser beams at our colleagues, and they threw miscellaneous items and corrosive fluids at the police station, and they used barricades, etc., to set up roadblocks, causing traffic blockage. And we signed a number of warnings to no avail, and so we had to use appropriate force to disperse the crowd and to arrest them. Just in a moment, Mr. Wright, DC from Mong Kok, will give you the details. Here, I would like to take this opportunity to talk about the coverage by the press at the scene. Many of our colleagues have already told us that on the ground, especially when there was chaos, it was really difficult to differentiate between reporters from the protesters. Many people were wearing reflective vests, but are they really genuine journalists? In the past, in different cases, we have already seized a number of fake press cards. In fact, the Hong Kong Journalists Association has already reported cases to the police, saying that they have found fake press cards on this site of protests. In fact, who were they? What sort of ulterior motives have they got that they would like to feign themselves as reporters? And what role do they play when they go to the violent protests? In the past, we had good understanding with the press, and the reporters would not be obstructing our operations. This is because professional reporters would never affect the operation of our police force. I know that for the Photographers Association, they issued a guideline on the 9th of August, and they reminded reporters that when there was violence, they shouldn't have placed themselves between the police and the protesters. They should not allow themselves to be the sort of protection of the protesters, and they shouldn't stand within the range of shooting of the police. But yesterday, we could see that at Prince Edward, when our colleagues were trying to subdue the arrested persons, reporters surrounded our colleagues to take photographs, and there were over 10 were trying to attack our police officers while there was a chaos. Our colleagues didn't know whether they were trying to snatch the arrested persons, so they used their pepper sprays to stop. I know genuine reporters would not attack police officers and would not try to escape with the arrested persons, but clearly someone would like to disguise themselves as reporters to attack police officers. I think just like towards the end of August in Chunghwa, we knew that we had to disperse the crowd, we had to make arrests. I think we have made this point many times at such press conferences. We would like to advise you not to stand in front of our cordon line without any distance at all, especially when we would like to move on. And this means that it will be difficult for us to discharge our duties. If reporters place themselves between the police and the protesters, our colleagues will find it difficult to tell who is a reporter. So I would like to appeal to professional reporters. During our police operation, please protect yourselves. Please avoid obstructing and affecting the police operations. I would like to urge reporters on the ground to identify people around you so that you can tell who's actually doing their press coverage work, so that no one will be disguising themselves as reporters.
I reiterate that the police force respect the rights of the press, and we would also send media liaison units for on-site assistance. If you run into any suspected faint reporters, please notify our media liaison unit so that we could follow up. If possible, we would ask them to show their press IDs or leave the area so that they would not obstruct the work of other reporters. I will now hand over to Mr. Kong to share with us some operation figures, and then Mr. Wright will tell us about the protest activities in Mong Kok yesterday. Thank you very much. In the so-called uncooperative movement yesterday, at Lei Yue Mun Square, Lok Fu MTR station, and Lai King MTR station, the police arrested 8 people for possession of offensive weapon and breach of court injunction. I stress that the MTR Corporation has filed an injunction order with the court, and I condemn the open breach of the court injunction because it is a challenge towards the rule of law. At our operation in Mong Kok, we also made arrests last night, and we arrested a total of 23 persons. Mr. Wright will tell us about the details in a moment. As of this morning, since the 6th of September, 1,140 people were arrested. As for the court cases, as for the violence that occurred in Yuen Long on the 21st of July, 31 people were arrested so far, and 4 were charged for rioting, and they have made court appearances. Yesterday, the police charged 1 more man for rioting, and the court and it has made a court appearance at Fanling Magistrates Court this afternoon. And in our operations yesterday and today, 2 officers were injured on duty. Yesterday morning, 2 of our officers were dealing with protests at Lok Fu MTR station when subduing a protesters. Since the protester put up vigorous resistance, 2 officers were injured. Upon treatment, they have been discharged. The protester in question has been arrested, and the alleged offense is assault on police officer and indecent behavior in a public place. And since yesterday, one CS round was deployed. At about 10 p.m. yesterday, a large group of protesters gathered outside Mong Kok police station, and they hurled various items towards the station and applied laser beams. And at about 10:25 p.m., after multiple warnings by the police, the protesters refused to leave, and as such, the police conducted dispersal. During the operation, some protesters assaulted police officers outside Mong Kok police station, and some people seriously obstructed police officers in our arrest work, and they tried to seize suspects. At about 11:25 p.m., one tear gas round was fired for dispersal, and we have some clarifications to make. There are allegations online that at a secondary school in Tai Po, since some people supported the class boycott and they were arrested by the police. I'd like to clarify that at about 8 a.m. this morning, we received 4 reports. Some were from parents of that school, and they claimed that there was noise nuisance outside the school. After our officers arrived at the scene, they saw 40 to 50 people gathering outside the school, and some of those people were not students of that school, and there were also students who were wearing school uniform. And these people suddenly fled upon the arrival of the police officers, and our officers had to pursue them to find out who they were. In the meantime, since the ground was slippery, both our officers and some of the people in the crowd slipped, and some were injured and sent to hospital. 5 people were intercepted, and they were released since there was nothing suspicious. No arrests were made. Meanwhile, on some social media websites, some people continue to claim falsely that at the night of 31st of October at Prince Edward MTR station, some people were battered by the police to death, and allegedly the corpse has been brought to the mortuary of Kwong Wah Hospital. Like we said yesterday, such accusations were untrue and false, and I stress once again that no one died in the incident. Kwong Wah Hospital also clarified that there was no body involving the public or the events on the 31st of August that is currently located in Kwong Wah Hospital. So please stop spreading such rumors. As for the fluorescent powder, there are also rumors online that the government flying service deployed helicopters yesterday and sprayed fluorescent powder at protesters. We point out that based on information provided by the GFS, the chopper in question was transporting an injured person from Cheung Chau to Wan Chai district, and the person was taken to hospital afterwards. The police did not request or deploy the government flying service, let alone using fluorescent powder. I strongly condemn the malicious accusations, and they serve to smear the police force. I think you should ask the people spreading the rumors what their motives are. I will now hand over to Mr. Wright.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start my presentation, I would like to show you a short video clip concerning the events in Mong Kok last night.
重接難同十個等等，截至凌晨，交通受到影響。
some people hurled eggs at Mongkok police station. At about 11:30 p.m., riot police subdued another woman outside Mongkok police station. An alleged mainlander was surrounded and he was attacked. Some people tried to stop the assault at the scene.
Okay, I'll now start my statement concerning the events in Mongkok last night. Over the past 3 nights in particular, Mongkok police station has been surrounded and attacked by large crowds of unruly protesters. And in the past 2 weeks alone, the station defense has been activated on no less than 6 occasions. The behavior of these protesters has caused severe traffic congestion along Prince Edward Road West, Nathan Road, as well as obstructing the pavements in the area. Moreover, this has caused considerable inconvenience to the public in the vicinity of the police station. Many shops, restaurants, market stalls, and places of entertainment have had their business severely impacted. Indeed, on many occasions, local businesses have had to stop or close early due to the disruption caused by the protesters. At the same time, repeated warnings by the police have been ignored by the protesters. They have nightly refused to leave the area and have resorted to throwing paint bombs, corrosive liquid, rotten eggs, rocks, stones, and shining lasers at police officers conducting station defense. This has caused damage to the station building, and also one officer was burnt by a corrosive liquid. The protesters have also smashed up nearby public facilities, including bus stops, pavements, and road signs. Last night, in particular, crowds started to gather along Prince Edward Road West so that the station defence was implemented at 20:35 hours. By 22:05 hours, some 600 protesters had gathered outside the station, throwing water bottles, spraying graffiti on the station walls, throwing eggs and causing severe traffic congestion in the North Kowloon area. In particular, even an art wall painted on the station perimeter by a group of children with genetic diseases was defaced by the protesters using black paint. Eventually, the crowds were dispersed between 22:35 and 01:35 hours, leading to the police making a total of 23 arrests for various offences, including unlawful assembly, assault occasioning actual body harm, assaulting a police officer, possession of an offensive weapon, disorderly conduct, failing to produce proof of identity, and theft. Moreover, last night, when our officers were responding to a case of a member of the public being assaulted on Tung Choi Street, as you saw in the video recording, large numbers of the press caused severe difficulties to our police officers extracting the injured person from the area to a place of safety. Police gave repeated warnings to the press and also the protesters to move back in order to give our officers space to perform their duties, but our requests were not complied with. After a considerable struggle, one victim was brought back to the police station via the entrance on Tung Choi Street. Simultaneously, at the front of the police station, 3 arrested persons in connection with this assault case were being brought back to the station. However, as they withdrew to the station, a large number of press and crowds surrounded the officers. During the extraction of these arrested persons, our officers were kicked, beaten, pushed, and tripped over. And it also appeared that there were some persons trying to facilitate the removal of one of the arrested persons from our police custody. This action put the press, the protesters, and police in severe danger of either being crushed or injured. In these circumstances, despite making repeated requests and warnings, those officers had no alternative other than to use pepper spray in order that they could withdraw safely to the station and process the arrested persons. The police fully respect the rights of the press to go about their work and facilitate them to the best of our ability at all times. However, the behaviour of some of the press last night placed our officers, the arrested person, and indeed the press themselves in danger. I here again would like to emphasise that we would like to request the police to fully comply with our instructions in these often fluid operational situations for their own safety and for that of our police officers. Thank you.
我會做一個總結，我相信咧每一個香港人咧。
Let me summarize. I'm sure every Hong Konger would not want Hong Kong to continue with such chaos. Everybody would like to have a safe, peaceful, and happy environment for the development of the children. We can see that almost day in, day out, we have protest activities that are violent. Please think about it. What sort of Hong Kong would you like to see in the future? When you see such scenes of violence, I hope you will come forward and we can join hands to stop the violence. In relation to part of what I've said in Chinese, I'm going to give an English summary.
Protester wreaked havoc across the city, with as many as 100 petrol bombs thrown recklessly at civilians, police officers, and buildings. Such violent acts pose a grave danger to the ordinary citizens, as well as our officers on protest sites. Last Sunday, radical protesters vandalized as many as 1/3 of all MTR stations in Hong Kong, smashing various facilities and stirring public fears. Then yesterday, such rampant acts went on in the form of a disobedience campaign, with protesters blocking train doors and paralyzing MTR services. Thanks to the close communication with the MTRC and police, we act on their request and provide assistance in controlling the unrest inside different stations. Indeed, with our timely intervention, train services resumed normal soon afterwards. But as the night fell, a large group of protesters gathered outside the Mong Kok police station, behaving in a disorderly manner. Not only did they point laser beams and barricades main roads, but they also assault passers-by randomly, taking justice in their own hands. But as our officers were enforcing the law and clearing the street, there was much obstruction. A large group of reporters were sandwiched between police and protesters. That certainly burdened our dispersal operations, and the police cordons advanced through the already congested protest sites. In one flashpoint, while our officers were arresting a female, all of a sudden, a group of people, including some dressed in yellow reflective vests, surround and attack our officers. In such a chaotic scene, it is very difficult for our officer to distinguish between genuine reporters and pretend reporters. And in our past operations, we have indeed seized fake press passes. You may also have seen certain protesters even disguise their identities by changing clothes, pretending to be anyone but a protester. While we respect freedom of press, we have also come to an understanding with traditional media that professional journalism should not get in the way of police action. We appeal to bona fide members of the press to maintain a safe distance with our officers, especially when they are making arrests and carrying out dispersal operations. As for arrest figures, just now, District Commanders of Mong Kok Chief Superintendent Mr. Bradley White explained in details, so I will not repeat again. In addition to what Mr. Wright said, we arrest 8 people in various MTR stations and their vicinities. Offences include possession of offensive weapons and breach of injunction orders, which was enforced in MTR. Now I will rebut some false rumors circulating online. First, there is a public concern about police action in Taipo this morning. I would like to clarify that the police received 4 reports of noise complaints outside the school. When our officers arrived at scene, around 50 people were gathering outside the school. They suddenly ran away upon seeing our officers. Our officers gave chase just to conduct inquiry. During the process, several people, including our officers, fell on the ground because of the slippery fall. Some were injured and sent to hospital for treatment, and no arrest was made. Secondly, there are rumors that anti-riot police officers conduct stop and search outside a school to prevent students from going on class boycott yesterday. Such rumor is totally false. At that time, officers were only responding to reports made to the police about noise nuisance and disorderly conduct. As some anti-riot officers were on standby in the vicinities, they arrived at the scene and found 30 people gathering outside the school. After investigation, they did not make any arrest, and the incident was resolved peacefully. Lastly, we must clarify again that there is no death resulting from the MTR violence incident over the weekend. This is confirmed by the hospital authority and Kong Wah Hospital. Any online rumors that say otherwise is not only false, but also maliciously smelling the police. In conclusion, it's the 13th week that the ongoing unrest has engulfed the city. I believe many Hong Kong people are also longing for an end to repeated and reckless violence. It is high time to restore public safety and order. We sincerely appeal to every member of the public to join us getting Hong Kong back on track. Thank you.
好，而家問題時間，每位最多問3條。Sorry，經濟。
Q&A now, 3 questions each. Hong Kong Economic Times. First of all, if I may follow up on what happened at Prince Edward Station. Well, for the raptors, I think they beat up people there. And yesterday, the police said that we had to look at the context. Well, you use force to subdue the people. Of course, we have to look at the situation. But then the raptors went onto the train and used their batons to hit people. Well, they cowered and they were kneeling down and they were begging the police to stop. How come that you still use the pepper spray? You said that you had to use force just to stop the action. So I want to know whether the raptors had already breached your guideline. Well, yesterday, Mr. Lee said that some people were arrested at Yau Ma Tei Station. But then you said that you had to take time to watch the CCTV footage to see if they were involved. Were they related to the 63 arrested, that is the 7 injured? Even the raptors didn't know for sure who were beaten up. So how come that you can say with certainty that the police didn't beat people up?
The second question. Yesterday, the police clarified that on the footbridge, the female protester with a gun was not an undercover officer, but some people photographed yesterday that the the man who threw a petrol bomb had a red flashlight on his body. So how can the police ascertain that the person who threw the petrol bomb was not a police officer? There were recent cases in which ammunition or guns were dropped. So how can you sure that this would not happen, because it would jeopardize public safety? And I have a question about police warrants and police IDs. Earlier, the police confirmed that uniformed officers, including riot police, had to display their police ID. And in the past, you said that they were moving around and the vests might inadvertently cover their IDs. But we saw that for many riot police officers, even if they remain stationary, we cannot see their ID. When the officers intercepted people at Tin Shui Wai Station, a woman was asked by a police officer to go home, and the woman wanted to lodge a complaint, and as such, she was body searched and asked to produce her ID. And at that time, the riot police officer did not carry a police ID on his shoulder. So on one hand, the police said people can lodge complaints, and on one hand, they are intimidating citizens. So can you ask your frontline officers to wear their warrants and behave in a polite manner? You asked a lot of questions, so we will try to answer questions with the information we have. First of all, at Prince Edward Station, you mentioned the police officers. Well, they received a report by the public since violence occurred. Some people were beaten up, properties were snatched, and some people had an altercation with passengers on the train, and upon receiving reports, the police carried out enforcement action at the platform area of Prince Edward Station. When the officers arrived, as we explained a lot of detail yesterday already, so I don't want to waste all your time. When the police officers arrived at the site, many MTR passengers were able to leave the station. Some others chose to stay in the MTR station to continue what they were doing. Not all citizens were intercepted or stopped or subject to any force. You said police officers entered the station to attack citizens. I don't agree with your claim at all. The officers entered different platform areas of the police station. There were multiple trains and multiple cars. We only entered certain cars and some platform areas. The reason was that when the officers arrived on site, they would consider different factors before deciding on their course of action on protesters, including the alleged site of incident. The officers would also observe and analyze the situation. On certain cars, some violent protesters put up a formation of umbrellas, and when the officers tried to enter the trains, the protesters put up resistance with umbrellas and other hard objects. After the officers entered the trains, we can see very clearly from footage that some protesters use umbrellas and other parts of their bodies to attack police officers. So the police officers applied appropriate force at the time to deal with the violent protesters they identified. So that was something we explained already yesterday. So I do not agree with your accusation. Yesterday, you asked about the 7 injured persons. So I have information to share with you today. Yesterday, we reported that at Prince Edward Station, 7 injured persons were taken to hospital via Lai Chi Kok Station, and we understand that all the 7 injured persons were arrested persons. They were all arrested for taking part in an unlawful assembly. All 7 injured persons are on bail pending investigation. Like we said yesterday, we arrested a total of 63 people, of which 3 were sent to the CNP court, and 2 others accused of possession of dangerous weapon also made court appearances. Another 60 went on bail. So that is my reply to your first question. I knew what happened before and after, but in your operation to subdue persons, after you attacked the people, they were already on their knees begging. But still, you used pepper spray. Was such acts in breach of your use of force guidelines? I would first ask Mr. Kong to answer the second and third questions for time's sake. Well, we have set the rules. Only 3 questions are allowed each. If you continue to follow up, well, you asked 4 or 5 questions already. So let's be fair in our questions. So, thank you very much. Mr. Kong, I would answer the second question. Like we have said many times, we have strict guidelines for undercover officers. Under no circumstance or operation would we carry out illegal acts. For the red flashlights you mentioned, I do not quite know what they were, but I stress that our undercover officers would not do anything illegal. Every time after rioters carry out vandalism or throw petrol bombs, if they want to find an excuse by blaming it on the undercover, or if they want to pass up as undercover officers, it would not work. So we would not tolerate any illegal behavior, and we will make arrests when there's enough evidence. As for the guns carried by our officers, like we said, our colleagues would be very careful in taking care of their equipment or gear, and in different operations, based on need, we would equip our officers with various gear. A very practical consideration is that, well, our officers certainly do not want to lose or drop any gear. So please be reassured that our officers would take the greatest care in their gear. What about the police warrant and IDs? 3 questions were already answered. The reporter in white. Well, let's do it this way. The rule is 3 questions each. 2 questions were already answered. Please allow me to complete. Mr. Kong took 2 questions already, and Mr. Chair, another question. The questions from the reporter from the Economic Times actually made up of many questions. Next, please. You can raise your hand if you want to go for the next round. Well, if each question actually contains many questions, then it would be very hard for us to answer them all. The second question was about what to do with the drop guns, and the third question about police warrant. So this is very clear. Mr. Kong answered 2 questions, and Mr. Chair 1 question. If other questions want to ask the same questions, they are free to do so. Let's move on to the next reporter. Ming Pao.
Yes, I would like to follow up on the question asked by the Hong Kong ET. The person involved knelt down to beg. Still, you were spraying the tear gas. Keith Fong has been arrested, but in fact he was alleged to have committed theft. But then what he had with him was something that he intended to return to the property owner. Are you going to release him? Yesterday at the dispersal operation in Mong Kok, there were people who had their hands stepped on and bitten. Some people ask whether the police officers have lost their conscience, and for what reason were they arrested? Well, I answered the first question. For the second and third questions, Mr. Wright. Well, for the train compartment at Prince Edward Station, you referred to 2 persons at that time. In fact, there were others around them. At that time, our colleagues moved in and out of the train car. You saw the train doors opening and closing. But in fact, all the time, others were putting up a struggle. So when colleagues were moving into the train car, he met with resistance, and he used the baton as well as the pepper spray. That's what we saw happening on that day. You said that at the time, some of them might have acted in such a way, and others acted in another way. Well, I think that's what happened. But our colleagues saw what happened on the spot, and they were faced with the threat, and so he used the appropriate force to deal with it. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Wright.
With respect to the question concerning the person arrested last night in possession of property that he was unable to give a reasonable account for his possession of. In fact, the police gave the person every opportunity at the time to explain why he was in possession of that property, but was unable to do so. As such, in accordance with the law, he was brought back to the police station for further inquiry, and later, after we had conducted inquiries on his behalf, proactively, we located the owner of that property. As a result of that, the person in question was released unconditionally this afternoon. With respect to your second question concerning the matter of conscience, I absolutely rebut this allegation. Police action is always based on the rule of law, enforcement of the law, and evidence. A thorough investigation is always made into each and every case, and if necessary, legal advice will be sought from the Department of Justice.
第三位 CCTV。
The third from CCTV. I'm from CCTV. 3 questions. First of all, in the afternoon, at a press conference of the Hong Kong Macau Affairs Office, 3 points were made. First of all, it was said that it is hoped that the Hong Kong SAR government, as well as all members of the community, will put a stop to the violence, and there should be a consensus. We should act on this. Violence should not be allowed, and in fact, this is the greatest threat to Hong Kong. Well, we see the escalation, continuous escalation of violence. What are you going to do on the part of the police so as to maintain the rule of law in Hong Kong? And then secondly, I've also noticed that just now at that press conference, it was said that when the police was enforcing the law in relation to the arrest of the lawbreakers, it was said that the reporters on the site had intervened. And in fact, some of them surrounded the police officers and tried to give protection to the protesters. I want to know whether they have been obstructing your work. And under such circumstances, do you have the power to do anything about the reporters that are obstructing your work? And then at that press conference by the Hong Kong Macau Affairs Office, I want to know whether they are protesters who are disguising as reporters and engaging themselves in law-breaking activities. Do you have any measures to prevent this from happening? And are you going to do anything, say, for example, verifying the identity of the reporters on this ground? Let me answer the first 2 questions. As to the third question, that is whether fake reporters are engaged in any law-breaking activities, I would defer to Mr. Lee. As to what happened in the past 2 months, and at our press conferences, we have already made this point. A lot of violent protest activities took place. Many violent protesters attacked police officers, they damaged police stations, they damaged police vehicles. And in fact, you can see that for those people with different political views from the protesters, they were also attacked. In the course of our operations, whenever we can, we'll make immediate arrests. And then for those they cannot be arrested immediately, we carry out an investigation, we collect evidence, and if necessary, we'll approach the Department of Justice, and when there is adequate evidence, we will make arrests on a continuous basis. The purpose is as follows. Any offenders, any law-breaking activities will be brought to justice, and people will have to bear such a responsibility. You refer to the acts of the reporters. In my opening remarks, I have already said that I firmly believe that genuine professional reporters would not do anything to obstruct the police work. The majority of the reporters have good understanding with the police, usually. It is only in the past months of protests, and I think most of you haven't gone through this kind of activities. So maybe we can see that there were problems in sort of interfacing with the police. In particular, when we have to move in, when we have to disperse the crowd, when we have to make arrests, sometimes the reporters, probably due to a lack of communication adequately, have misunderstanding or have confrontation with the police. But still, we have sent out a lot of colleagues acting as media liaison officers so as to help the media. So to answer your question, I don't think professional reporters would break the law. But as I have said, and I believe at the scene of violent protests, you must have seen many people who are wearing press vests and carrying fake reporter cards appearing. For this group of people, why would they want to appear at the site of protest using a fake press card? I don't think I can give you an answer, but I have to say that they indeed prevented us from carrying out our work. They obstructed us. And in fact, sometimes they allowed themselves to act like a protection for the violent protesters. That's why just now I have made the point many times. First of all, you have to ensure your own safety. Secondly, please help to detect those who are disguising as one of you. The police, in the course of our operation, would like to find them out to understand their motives. If they break the law, we will act on them. Now, as to the other question, I'd like to defer to Mr. Lee. Perhaps I should address the question from the perspective of investigation. After dispersal, sometimes in a case, we might have discovered a number of fake press cards. As to why such have been used, well, as Mr. Kong has said, probably people would like to use such cards to approach the police cordon line, or they would like to stir up trouble. Now, when we discover the press cards, the fake press cards, and if it is found that they have used such fake cards, in fact, we can cite Section 73 of the Crimes Ordinance. That is, somebody is using a forged document. Well, in fact, it carries quite a serious penalty. So, via the media, I would like to tell everybody not to do anything against this particular section. It carries a heavy penalty. And if it is found that somebody is not a reporter, and in fact he plays a role in such illegal protests, in fact he is committing another crime. Say, for example, participating in an unlawful assembly. Thank you.
RTHK3.
I have three questions. Last question. Regarding a man who was chased and beaten by riot police and taken away for simply shouting at officers, where's your conscience from across the street? Does this man or actions or speech actually warrant such a reaction from officers? And will citizens now be taken away for simply insulting or shouting at officers? Because we have seen this happen in Prince Edward last night, in Tai Wai 2 days ago. Is Hong Kong now a police state? Second question regarding fake journalists. These fake journalists you mentioned and the journalists who are actually hurt, among them is a now TV journalist who got pushed and hurt. A cable TV cameraman was pepper sprayed when no protesters were around. They're obviously not fake reporters you mentioned, so are your officers simply too tense or paranoid? Let's talk about real reporters then. We got kicked out of MTR Prince Edward Station when we want to do our job. Your media liaison team never actually answer anything or actually answer our questions when we say we want to lodge complaints. Some even called us corrupt journalists. So since June, this situation has been getting worse and worse. Do your frontline officers actually understand that reporters are not your enemies? Third question, the head of the Hong Kong Court Prosecutors Association has accused the police of lying about the timing of the arrest on August 30th, and saying that such lies would damage the justice system. And this is not an isolated case, but it happened repeatedly in recent months. How will you respond to these allegations? And sirs, have you ever lied to us during these press conferences?
Okay, I'll pass the floor to Mr. White for the first question and address the other one.
With respect to the matter of the conscience of police officers, I think I answered the question earlier. In all cases, police action is based upon the law, the available evidence, and also our duty to maintain the rule of law in Hong Kong. In each and every case, we will conduct a thorough investigation, and there may often be other offences related to the arrest case that you are talking to in particular. As I said earlier, our police action is based on the rule of law. Offences that officers have observed to have committed Obviously, no person would be arrested for expressing a view. Police action is based on evidence of the person that you're referring to having committed other offences.
He was pretty far away from the officers, so what did he do actually?
So there are other offences that the person you have referred to is being investigated for, including disorder in a public place.
And is Hong Kong now a police state? That was also one of my questions that I was supposed to ask.
I think I'll answer the second and third question. For the court prosecutor criticisms, we are aware of that accusation, and I'll say that is totally false and unfounded. We also know that the Department of Justice have already responded to that accusation, and I must reiterate that the law enforcement authority, we as a law enforcement authority, when we make arrest and prosecute a case, we will only look at the sufficiency of the evidence, and if necessary, arise of the DOJ, the Department of Justice, before we lay the charge. And I'm not going to repeat what I mentioned in the previous press conference, but the crux is very simple. If someone breaks the law, the police will bring them to justice. That's all I can give you the comment. And while for the third question, basically you mentioned a few cases, and basically yesterday, from what I saw in the online news or videos, basically for the assault incident you mentioned about Now TV reporters, basically a complaint has been made early this morning, and I am not going to give you all the details of that complaint. But I would like to mention that we are aware that many basically, the whole incident began with the arrest of a female suspect. And as our officers were subduing that female suspect, the officer were surrounded and hit by a group of people, including a few people wearing the vest. In response to that sudden and intense violence, our officers had no choice but to use appropriate force to contain the situation, and they deployed pepper spray to disperse the crowd. And basically, I reiterate that we respect the journalism and the freedom of press. But in such critical moment, in the scenario that I just mentioned, our officers sometimes cannot distinguish basically who are genuine and who are pretend reporters or other.
I wasn't asking about one incident. I was asking whether your frontline officers understand that press and journalists are not your enemies, because I was also asking about people being called corrupt journalists, which no one here wants to be called that.
Definitely, I would like to mention that police respect the freedom of media as well as the journalism. And for any specific complaint, feel free to give us a call or make a report to the capital.
The gentleman in grey. I'm from Guangdong Broadcast TV, and you said the police would rebut rumors online. As of now, does the Hong Kong police have means or the technology to trace who the people creating the rumors are? Are you going to prosecute the people creating the rumors? The second question is about protection towards the families of police officers. There are calls online that they would target the families and children of police officers. Have the police received any cases calling for help, and what measures do you have to protect the families of police officers? And I have a question about the size of the police force. I understand that many frontline officers are under stress. Did any police officer leave as a result in recent months? And in terms of boosting police morale, what is the force management doing? The first question I would defer to Mr. Kong. For the second question, Mr. Lee. And then I will take the third question. With regards to rumors online, like I said in the opening remarks, there are many rumors circulating online. Of course, under the law of Hong Kong, some people might think that making claims online would not carry any consequences, but we would have to look at the cases in particular. If some rumors involve inciting unlawful behavior from other people, or if there are rumors that would encourage extreme violence or other unlawful acts, there is a possibility that relevant offences would be committed. For example, dishonest use of computers. So with regards to online rumors, at the PPRB and the Cyber Security and Crimes Unit, we will closely monitor the rumors online which could jeopardize public safety or incite certain public acts which are illegal. We would closely monitor the situation, and through different channels, including press conferences, our social media platform, or press releases, we will dispel certain rumors. And with the rapid flow of information online, when the media or citizens encounter any rumors online, they are encouraged to understand more and try to verify them. They should not believe the rumors too easily. For example, claims that someone has died and the body is at the mortuary of Kwong Wah Hospital. So by applying wisdom and accessing more information sources, many rumors online can be dispelled. I would now hand over to Mr. Lee for the second question. With regards to threats online targeting the families or children of police officers, I'd like to share some figures with you.
Since June, altogether, 1,567 police officers have their data doxed. That is, the information was available online. 257 police families with 71 children have their personal information again being doxed. Altogether, we have 180 plus cases of nuisance or even threat. Say, for example, the information posted in the street, or they receive nuisance calls, or others have ordered takeaway food for them, and in more serious cases, there were threats that they would be kidnapped. As Mr. Kong has said, as far as the cyber world is concerned, we have in fact a particular team looking into such online crime. All the offences in the real world will also apply to the cyber world. Say, for example, criminal intimidation as well as access to computer with criminal or dishonest intent. When the threat is executed, like if it becomes something in the real world, like kidnapping, then again it is an offense. We will carry out investigation relying on our dedicated teams, and then for the victim families and victim police officers, we will render our support to them. As to the third question, yes, I will give a brief reply. You talked about resignations. We have got two figures. First, natural wastage, that is people retiring, and then non-natural wastage, people leave for reasons other than retirement. I haven't got the figures with me, but then for the two figures, when added together, when compared with the same figure, same period last year, we don't see any major difference. As well as to the support, as Mr. Lee has said, well, there have been officers who have their data exposed. There were also cases of criminal intimidation. Well, the force has our counseling session to provide psychological support to them. And then we have also helped the police officers by enhancing their equipment. You can see the rapid escalation of violence. In the beginning, bricks were thrown. Now, sharp objects and petrol bombs or even imitation firearms have been used. So the police have also been enhancing the equipment used. So we hope that in terms of operational needs and in terms of counseling, we are trying to help our colleagues. The last three reporters, Now TV. Yesterday, in Mongkok, during the operation, a photographer, without charging at the police, and without trying to snatch away the arrested person, without obstructing your operation, we kept a distance of 2 or 3 persons from the operating police officers. A Raptor team member came at him suddenly and he was pushed to the ground. Why did he do that? And then for the Raptor team members, they never display their ID numbers. And then for the number on the helmet, again, it has been covered by their scarf, half of it covered. Is it, as it has been alleged, you allow them to do so that they don't need to worry for consequences, and as a result, those affected by the action would have no way to find justice being done. Now, you said that the student slipped and fell, but in fact, from the footage, we can see that the police officer took the initiative to dash at them and he tackled them and 2 students fell to the ground as a result. What was your first question? Our photographer didn't charge at the police officers. We didn't obstruct your work. And he kept a distance or 2 or 3 persons distance from the police officer. But how come the Raptor officer pushed him to the ground? Well, the photographer involved had already lodged a formal complaint. Well, today I tried to search for the footage, but I'm not able to find out what actually happened prior to the critical moment. As to the saying that there was the snatching of the offender, let me tell you about the consequence. When you arrested the girl, police officer deployed the pepper spray. Reporters dispersed, and then we went forward to take photographs. And we didn't go in right up there, and we were 2 or 3 persons away. And then the Raptor pushed us away, and 2 or 3 of us were pushed away, and our photographer was one of them. Well, as I have said, it is now under the complaints mechanism, so I can't disclose the details. We are going to walk through the handling mechanism. As to individual cases, I'm afraid I cannot comment on what others have said about the ID numbers of the Raptor teams. As you have pointed out, for our Raptors, well, they are the STS, and on their helmet, they have got a number for the purpose of identification. Well, if we would like to identify a particular person in an incident, we can rely on such a unique number. In other words, this can achieve the purpose of identifying the police officer. We have this arrangement because in the past there was a very serious problem of the officers involved having their identities exposed online. Well, in fact, I can always see their number. Well, for individual officers, sometimes their number may be partially covered. Of course, this is not ideal, and if necessary, we can follow this up. As to the typo case, I would defer to Mr. Kong. Well, as to the incident at a school in Typo, I referred to this a moment ago. At that time, a number of reports were received saying that there was nuisance and noise complaints. Our officers arrived, dozens of people were gathering outside the school. We saw that some people were not the students of the school. They were not in school uniform, they didn't dress like the school students. We were there, and then a group of people fled. They were running away. At the time, our officers would like to catch up with them so as to understand more about the incident. You said as to whether the officers dashed at them and so the students fell. I won't comment on that. Well, in fact, I could see officers slipped and fell as well. Is it a matter of accident? It will be difficult for me to confirm. But then what I want to point out is that our officers would like to run after them, to catch up with them, to understand more. After investigation, it was found that nobody had committed any offense and everybody was released. Let me add to this. For the typo case this morning, well, yesterday we had the beginning of the school year. Yesterday was the 2nd of September. Well, in fact, the police didn't just receive calls for assistance for this school alone. Altogether, starting from yesterday, 23 cases were reported. School authorities, parents, students, and pedestrians, passers-by made the reports. Most of them called 999. Others reported to nearby policemen. And then for others, well, in fact, all along, we have got the school liaison officers. So the school authorities reported via that scheme. For the majority of them, they said that they found some people suspicious, and others said that there was a noise problem, etc. In other words, it shows that for the past day or two, there were citizens who were concerned about what happened outside the schools.
Upon receiving such reports, the police are obliged to visit the site and deal with the incidents. The incident in Taipo this morning was a response to us receiving 4 reports on serious noise nuisance in the school or outside the school. So upon arriving at the site, the officers had to understand or investigate the cause of the noise. And after our officers left the hospital, a number of people ran off immediately. At that time, we wanted to understand the cause of the incident from the mass people who fled. So a lot of people slipped, not just one officer and one student. I would not speculate on the reason why they slipped, but I just want to present the whole situation. SCMP, please.
Hi, Locke from the SCMP. Again, the typo clip. Why didn't you just play the clip and let people judge whether a police officer, as many have said and seen, have tackled a student or a civilian instead of both slipping on the ground? Can you tell us, are you lying to us? Second question being on the journalists who were hurt during the police operation yesterday. You just said that reporters should tell officers if they spot suspicious people faking to be reporters. But how can we tell if that's real police if none of them wear a warrant card or a warrant ID? How can we tell if it's a real police and if that was the same case? Also, a young man was subdued and beaten and bloodied in Mongkok last night. Just now, Mr. Wright said that he was could be involved in public disorder. Is shouting at the police now public disorder? One person shouting at the police, does that amount to public disorder? Thank you.
I will invite Mr. Kwong to answer the first question, followed by Mr. White to answer the third question, and we'll come back to answer the second one.
Okay. As I've mentioned in Cantonese, actually this morning we received 4 reports of noise complaint concerning the secondary school in Tai Po. When our officers arrived, around 40 to 50 people were there, and they start to run when they see the arrival of our police officer. And our officers therefore chased this group of people in order to know what had really happened outside the secondary school. During the process, as I could see from a video clip, that probably due to the slippery ground, as a part of the scene.
Over the other student, he was grabbing and tackling the student. Is that slipping on the floor? I don't see how that's the case.
First of all, I do not agree with the wording tackle, as we are not playing rugby here. Probably we are going to extend our arm to stop that particular person, because we would like to know what had happened outside the secondary school. We stopped that boy or the youngster for inquiry. That is for sure. However, as I have mentioned, maybe due to the slippery ground there, both of them fell down. And of course, we could also see from the same video clip that many other people had actually slipped there. And so I'm not here to speculate anything regarding the reason why so many people fell down there. And that's it I could supplement.
Cable TV, please.
Concerning your question on the matter of the shouting affairs, in fact, the action in question at the time would have likely caused others or incited others to commit breaches of the peace or other such breaches of the law. In this particular case, we will investigate the case thoroughly, and it may be appropriate that we seek advice from the Department of Justice on the appropriate charge and offences. But as I have reiterated earlier, the police fully respect the rights of all citizens to express their views in a peaceful and lawful manner.
So he's still in custody?
The cases are still under investigation.
好，最後一條。
Final question, please.
As for the press pass, we have encouraged journalists to wear their press pass in the visible places and not to obstruct the police work. While for the basically the UI number as well as the warrant cards, we mentioned that we have strict internal guidelines on the display of the warrant card as well as the UI numbers on the uniforms. And basically, if you encounter any such situation, you can make a report to the capo.
好，點解頭先 K 寶最後一條？
Final question, please. Cable TV. I want to follow up on a question asked by another journalist. At Mongkok, a citizen yelled at the police saying that they are not welcome at Prince Edward, and another citizen accused the police officers of not having a conscience, and they were eventually pursued and arrested. I'd like to know on what offenses were they arrested? And second question, yesterday a lady a girl in shorts were subdued, so why wasn't she subdued by a female police officer, and on what charge was she arrested? Third question, as for the person who got stepped on his hand, the protester was already subdued. Why was excessive force used?
I believe I've already answered the question concerning the matter of the conscience. With regard to your second and third points, there was a very fluid situation outside of the police station last night. and in particular one female had been arrested by police officers for unlawful assembly and assaulting police officer. During the arrest, she put up a strong resistance to being brought into lawful custody. The situation was both crowded and the police officers involved were unable to move freely and were being kicked and pushed at the same time. It may have been the case that some of the officers in this instance had lost their balance and may have inadvertently pushed the suspect unintentionally. However, I have no doubt that this unintentional act was stopped immediately once the officers realized what had happened.
又或者我補充問題其他部分，咁咧就
I would supplement other details.
其實我哋喺呢度其實解釋過好多唔同嘅警方程序。
And like we have explained before, we have explained various police or arrest procedures. If a body search is to be conducted, we have strict guidelines, and that is, it must be conducted by an officer of the same gender. That is, a female officer would body search a female person, and same for males. And but very often at a scene of chaos, if we see a male conducting an unlawful act, if we only have a female officer on site, then arrest would still be made to ensure order. And very often, the circumstances do not allow us to make an arrest with an officer of the same gender. So, if possible, we would deal with we would make arrests with officers of the same gender. But as you understand, very often the situation is chaotic, and the people to be arrested would put up resistance. So, the key is to complete the arrest as soon as possible. We might not necessarily be able to arrange officers of the same gender. And like we explained earlier, the person who allegedly had his hand stepped on, we were actually conducting an arrest, and a female suddenly shoved our officer to the ground, and some violent people tried to seize people we were trying to arrest. And at the moment, the situation was very chaotic. Our officers tried to subdue the female as soon as possible, and that explained why we could not arrange an officer of the same gender to make the arrest. As for the allegation that someone had his hand stepped on, like I said, some people tried to seize the suspect, and our officer had his back on the chaos, and the officers wanted to rebuild a cordon line, and some officers, I would not speculate whether our officers might have stepped on a hand inadvertently. I would not comment on that. But like Mr. Wright said, if someone's hand has been inadvertently stepped on, then the person who stepped on the hand would realize it immediately. What about the citizen who accused the police of losing their conscience? On what charge or offense was he arrested? Can you give an answer in Chinese, please?
So concerning the question of the matter of conscience, okay, as I said earlier, police action is based on available evidence, the rule of law, and in the case that you are particularly referring to, the person has been arrested for disorderly conduct in a public place. That case, the particulars are still under investigation, and it may be appropriate that advice is sought from the Department of Justice on the appropriateness of the charges.
Under which rule of law to arrest this citizen?
Disorderly conduct in a public place.
今日嘅記者會完畢。
That's the end of today's press conference.